very simply, trusted bridges will be dead when we do that. So for me, it's like this timeline is 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. To me, it's just about the final shipment. So
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Okay, guys, welcome back. It's so cool to start recording again, to producing content again after Cosmoverse. So yeah, we are back in office. And now it's such a pleasure for me to welcome Brainjar from Composable Finance to the show, the first one after Cosmoverse. Hey, sir, how are you doing?
hello, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. And today we will talk about a very exciting topic. We will talk about how you guys are working on shipping IBC to Ethereum, which would be absolutely huge. But before we do that, you have been on the show a couple of times, but could you briefly elaborate what composable finance essentially is before we dive very deep into the tech?
Yeah, of course. So I think the biggest sort of next generation thing that people talk about in crypto is how do we make the space more available for mass adoption? And I think for me, a lot of the primitives exist in the Cosmos ecosystem to put these pieces together to create an infrastructure that is actually ripe for mass adoption. The problem is there's these pieces are sort of very dispersed, and a lot of them become very siloed to only Cosmos. And I think what we're doing with Composable is we're taking this philosophy of Cosmos and trying to bring it to other ecosystems, and then putting an infrastructure on top that lets people be able to build applications that tap into multiple different execution environments. So what this actually means is, can we build an application that is super straightforward, literally, what do I want to have in my wallet based on what I currently have in my wallet, and just be able to click execute? That is really the world that we want digital assets to progress to. And what that requires is trustless communication, trustless bridging, and an infrastructure to actually execute these things across these different environments. And so we're building both of these things. We're building IBC to multiple different ecosystems, and we're building XCVM, which is this execution layer on top of multiple different ecosystems for this sort of composition of functionality.
Yeah, that's super exciting, and I can only agree with that. So the future is that people do not really recognize, for example, on which blockchain they're actually interacting with. So I think seamless is the keyword here. But yeah, thanks for diving deep into this. I want to go back to a tweet that you tweeted months ago. You basically also said that Composable Finance's vision is to ship IBC to every corner of the industry where no IBC can be found yet. Is this still the vision, and could you elaborate on this briefly?
Yeah, this is absolutely the vision. So I think, we're not really focused on ecosystem. I think there are some other teams that are looking at bringing IBC to places that don't have light clients like Solana. I think we're a little bit less interested in doing that. I think we're more so interested in working on bringing IBC to ecosystems that actually want trustless bridging, which means they've invested the time to actually build a light client. This includes, of course, things like Ethereum, things like Polygon, things like Aptos, Sui, etc. So essentially every blockchain in the future to be considered a real decentralized system will probably have a light client. And as a result, hopefully we'll be able to connect to every ecosystem using these light clients in the future.
Yeah, that's also something I would like to add here. So for the people who are not too familiar with the process of how to enable IBC on a certain chain, there are some requirements, and as you mentioned it very well, light client support is necessary. And in case you do not know what a light client is, so There are full nodes and light clients. A full node basically stores the whole transaction history of a blockchain, while a light client is able to communicate with a full node to inform himself about the current status of the blockchain. So this is like, I think, a very important ground layer in this discussion. The last time you've been on this show, we talked about shipping IBC to the near ecosystem. That's super around the corner, so to say. We will have near in the IBC world very soon. And then we talked after the discussion about ETH 2.0, and you mentioned that you also work on this. So now that we are here, could we talk a little bit about the current status of shipping IBC to Ethereum?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you mentioned, the first like thing that will go live is our Picasso. So Picasso, we have obviously two parachains, one on Kusama, one on Polkadot. So a lot of these initial integrations will be starting on our Kusama parachain, and then eventually we move them to Polkadot. But yeah, the first thing we're going to be shipping is this bridge between Picasso to a bunch of Cosmos chains over IBC directly point to point. And then essentially we do the same thing with Near as well, which is in progress. We've had to pass a bunch of NEPs, as I've mentioned, to get that like fully up to speed. Ethereum now, we've invested some resources in over the past few weeks and months doing research. We found a pretty good approach that we're interested in taking. We're waiting on ETH2 to finish building the light clients for ETH2, like for the Ethereum Foundation to finish building that light client, which actually I tweeted out about this, that this doesn't seem to be super far away, actually. So that's pretty positive. And then I think essentially there's like some pieces of this problem. It's like two different pieces for the same solution, essentially. So to actually bring IBC to Ethereum, we need to make it, follow the IBC standard, but then we also need to make it cheap. So doing the actual bridging to Ethereum, as long as there's a light client, it'll be possible. There's no question about that. The question is like, how cheap is it? And that's where like a bunch of teams you see are talking about ZK, IBC, like doing zero knowledge stuff to reduce the cost. And that's like where things get really complicated. So we have a team of like 3 cryptographers like that work internally on exactly this problem, trying to understand how to like make the process as cheap as physically possible. I mean, this is a really hard problem. So I think if we're able to unlock this in the next 6 to 9 months, it is I think a huge win for the ecosystem.
Yeah, and besides the costs, there is also another aspect that you elaborated in a very detailed way on our last discussion. You mentioned that you feel more and more like a lobbyist, that you feel like a politician who has to go to different chains and have to convince people to enable IBC. Is this still the case? And would you also say that this is a huge thing about governance, and now also especially in the Ethereum ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, there's like a huge part of it that is really just political. Like I definitely feel like a politician more often than not in every ecosystem. Like I've had to do lots of stuff in the Near ecosystem, although they were very receptive, right? But like the time to actually get these people on the same playing field is like months, right? Like for people to actually acknowledge that this is something they actually need and want to spend time looking at, like it takes a while. Because there are other like insecure bridging protocols that someone could just say, oh, why don't you just use this bridging protocol? And so then it takes a long time for us to get to the right person who actually becomes our advocate in the respective ecosystem, who lets us, who can help us push these things forward. And a lot of the times they're like the core dev teams. So like the Ethereum Foundation, the Near core dev team, like Parity, Like these are the types of people that we have to speak to get them on the same page. Otherwise, you know, the the powers that be, like layer zero, you know, just essentially bribing all these protocols to just not, you know, to have them be the canonical bridge when really it's like a insecure bridging protocol. And so, yeah, it is like a huge political battle to try to make people wake up from this like lack of responsibility by selecting trusted bridges.
Yeah, definitely hear you there. And yeah, another thing I want to highlight here about like convincing. I think that's a good keyword here. Let's talk a little bit about EIP 3026 and EIP 2537, two old governance proposals. I think they were proposed in 2020 already. You mentioned it the last time when we had the discussion about NEAR.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's the status here? So basically, were they approved? What can we expect now? So because like I'm more familiar with the governance procedure in the Cosmos, but not so much with Ethereum. So maybe could you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so I believe actually one of them was actually approved, which was really exciting. So that's really like a really great step in the right direction. The next one is dependent on EIP 4844, which introduces dank sharding and all that stuff, which I don't want to go into a huge tangent about this, but yeah, that's kind of the like with these two things getting pushed, which they are getting pushed, I think people are definitely realizing that this stuff is now possible.
Okay, so in a nutshell, we are moving forward from governance proposal to governance proposal to governance proposal until one day it's technically possible to enable IBC on ETH.
I would say that like enabling IBC on ETH does not require much more than a light client. Making it cheaper, like with each governance proposal that passes, it becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Like it is possible, right? But the problem is it's like too expensive to the point that the cost of doing the transfer is sometimes more than what you want to transfer itself. You know what I mean? So I think from that perspective, like yeah, every proposal that is done, we're able to like make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. That's kind of the idea, and that's where all this like ZK magic essentially comes in, because ZK is like also another way to like potentially be able to bypass the necessity for a lot of these governance proposals. But obviously, like there's probably like 50 people in the world who really do ZK well, so that's also like a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is like very important to understand. So it's about making it cheaper. But like on that note, where are we? So sir, when IBC on ETH?
Yeah, so I would say like we'll be like we've been really heads down the past few weeks doing a lot of like testing and stuff, setting up our testnet to testnet group. We'll be making an announcement of like 25 or so Cosmos chains that have signed up for this between our parachain and their chain over IBC, which is really great. So you'll start to see governance proposals. We're going to put out a governance proposal on Osmosis, Neutron, and several other chains. So that's really been the core focus currently. Sean and the bridging team have now been sort of fully focused on researching this topic, and we're bringing in a pretty heavy hitter. I can't really say who yet, but someone who has a lot of experience in the ZK field, and hopefully, you know, this team that we're assembling to push to turbocharge this can have something in testnet, you know, 6 to 9 months. I think is a very optimistic perspective, but it is one of those things where if you have IBC to ETH, we've essentially unlocked everything, right? At that point, there is no excuse. There is no need for trusted bridges. There's no more people out there who could say, oh, IBC is too expensive. We need to use this like Oracle and Relayer setup situation. Like very simply, trusted bridges will be dead when we do that. So for me, it's like this timeline is 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. To me, it's just about the final shipment. So
Wow, that's a big statement actually. And I mean, if you're right, like from my perspective, 6 months still feels surreal for me. Imagining that
yeah.
we could have Ethereum in the interchain, but 9 to 12 months would also be like a very, very, very cool target. What you say, because we also talked about how you mentioned it publicly on Twitter, I believe, a couple of months ago, where you also mentioned that you work on enabling IBC on Polygon. So do you believe that the discussion and the procedure will be much more smoother after IBC has been enabled on Near and on Polygon, so to say, the little brother of Ethereum?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I think I think that's probably what we're going to end up doing for sure, because I think that the Polygon team is much more like moves a lot faster, obviously, because they're like a more sort of centralized organization. We are like, yeah, I think first of all, like IBC to Polkadot and Dot Sama is going to be the first time people actually realize like, oh wow, we have a real trustless bridge outside of the Cosmos ecosystem. And then I think people will start to pay attention and say, okay, like this isn't just some like BS that Brainjar tweets about, like, every here and there that IBC is coming to different places. Like when people actually can touch it and feel it, that it's actually real, like I think that, groups like Polygon, etc., will prioritize this a lot more for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that very well. But like, let's get to like a more uncomfortable point of you in this discussion, because we saw this one exploit on BNB, and Larry from Mars Protocol said that you could also argue that IBC got hacked to a certain point. And of course, it was like a shocker for the interchain, because IBC seemed to be the battle-proven, everything works with IBC aspect, so to say. So was there something like a rethinking procedure, like how safe is IBC at the end of the day, and what happens if if some security issues emerge that you do not have on the plan yet, as they were not spotted yet? So what were your thoughts on this generally?
Yeah, so I think, so first of all, like this, people are trying to compare this to the Nomad situation where everyone said, oh, the optimistic protocol is secure, but the protocol itself had a bug, and that's why the exploit occurred. Like, okay, fine. Like that's an argument to be made. However, like this situation with this is like there's a difference between light client verification based bridging being considered like insecure, and actual IBC, like the application layer on top, being considered secure. Like we don't necessarily, we try to definitely stick to all of the IBC standards, but the reality is like maybe some standards are not going to get loved by people in different ecosystems, right? Like ICS 721 as an example, like what if the near ecosystem just says, yeah, we don't want this? Like we have to basically say, okay, right? So the way I see it is like, yes, this was very scary. I don't think it disproves anything about light client verification being the most trustless form of bridging out there. I do think it means that we need to understand that because we remove the centralized third parties out of bridging in the IBC context, we need to be much more careful and certain about the type of code we're putting in. Because essentially at this point, if IBC were to get hacked, it is the fault of the people who are creating the code on both sides. It's not the fault of a centralized third party who's doing relaying. It is quite literally the fault of the people building IBC. And so we have like, we believe in the same sort of level of needing to hold ourselves to an incredibly high standard of security. We have like Halborn as our auditor. We have multiple different auditors on board as well. And we also have a bug bounty that we'll be putting out too. So these are like steps that we hope people will be able to like participate in to make the protocol more secure. But I think also a big piece of this too is there needs to be a fisherman protocol for IBC. And what we've done is we're building out a fisherman protocol where if we start to notice anything fishy, someone can put down a stake and flag that something fishy is happening and be able to alert, you know, us and just the general community that something weird is happening. So I think this fisherman specification is very important for IBC. Sunny has talked about some things like rate limiting and stuff like that. I actually don't really believe a lot in rate limiting. I think a really secure fisherman protocol is probably better than rate limiting, because like in 10 years from now, do we really want to be dealing with rate limits, right? And I think we build for like the mentality of 10 years from now. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, it was definitely very scary. And I think like these are the types of things that we're very aware of.
Yeah, definitely. It was scary for sure. But yeah, but we definitely move forward, so to say, and we also learn from it. The bug has been eliminated as far as I know. But yeah, speaking of that, like you mentioned the bug bounty program. So let's get to this point. How can people get involved? How can they help you pushing the message forward and maybe help you to bring IBC faster to Ethereum?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, anybody who's interested in this type of research, please feel free to reach out. We are always looking for really strong protocol developers. So people who really understand IBC, people who really understand ZK things, people who are excited to tackle basically the hardest problem in crypto. So yeah, definitely like keen to find contributors to that. As far as bug bounty goes, we will be releasing information about that. You could already check it out on Immunify's website. But yeah, in the meantime, like if there are any suggestions or people have any ideas about like the fisherman stuff we're doing, or just any concepts that people think could be helpful for this work we're doing, please feel free to just DM me on Telegram or Twitter. Yeah, @Brainjar on Twitter.
You heard it here first, guys. Yeah, feel free to reach out to him. Feel free to follow Composable on Twitter. Dive deeper if you have the knowledge bit. And also, yeah, you heard it here first. So apparently IBC is coming to Ethereum and to Polygon. We're living in very, very exciting times, and people often say it like this, but bear markets are here for building. And yeah, conversations like this make me very, very confident about the future of the interchain. I mean, if we have Ethereum and Polygon at the end of the bear market in the interchain, that would be like clearly a demonstration of power. With that said, Brainjar, thank you so much for taking the time. I think we have made a lot of value out of this 25 minutes only. So yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I hope I see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.